Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Bernt-Santy. We're going to have a great conversation today, or at least hear great smart things from my guest, who is Denisha Jones. Hi, Denisha.
Hi, Heather.
I'm not promising smartness from myself, but
Oh, I'm sure you'll be smart.
we'll see. We'll see how it
Yeah.
plays out. Denisha, I know some folks will know who you are, but why don't you talk about who you are for the folks who maybe don't yet?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Denisha Jones. My role right now is I'm the executive director of Defending the Early Years, and we are a national nonprofit that does early childhood advocacy. Before that work, I was a professor for 20 years in various universities doing teacher education, mainly early childhood, but a little elementary too. And before that, I was a kindergarten teacher, preschool teacher, and preschool director. Before transitioning to higher ed. And now I'm in the advocacy space, which I love, but I do miss teaching sometimes. And
Yeah.
I'm still writing and researching, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not quite the same. Like I always feel
Yeah.
like I would be writing more if I was still directly working with young children instead of
Yeah.
where I am now. Like I feel
Yeah.
like if I had that in front of me every day,
Yeah.
the writing
And
would
when I
be
was
easier.
teaching, at least I used to go see my students work with young children. So
Yeah,
I felt like I still had an in. And now
yeah,
I don't have that
yeah,
either. So I don't have none of that stuff. So it's kind of
yeah.
like, what am I doing here?
Oh my goodness. Well, so Denisha, you're here to talk about a chapter that you contributed to a book called The Commodification of American Education, Persistent Threats and Paths Forward, which was published in about 4 years ago, I think, right? 20,
Yeah.
2021, yeah. So your
Mhm.
chapter is called Resisting Neoliberal Reforms in Early Childhood Education, Play Pedagogy as the Antidote to GERM. Can we do a little defining of terms before I read the quote and we go
Yes,
forward?
yes.
Maybe for folks who aren't as familiar with neoliberal as a concept and
Yes.
what GERM stands for.
Yeah. So neoliberalism is it's a political and economic ideology that really advances free market capitalism. And it's dominated the policymaking. And so what's interesting is that it's conservative economics used to be about that kind of free market, but like it's now on the liberal side of things, which is
Mhm.
really, so you'll see a lot of like Democrat support for neoliberal policies. And I think that's what made it a big shift, right? Because it's not coming out just from what you'd see on the right side of politics, it's coming out from the left too.
Right.
And so in education, it looks like charter schools, it looks like fast track teacher prep like Teach for America, right? It looks like a lot of standardization in education
Mhm.
that's really being championed by a lot of Democratic supporters under
Yeah.
that. So yeah.
Yep, yep. And so if we're going to use or if we're going to have a conversation about play being an antidote to germ, we need to
Yeah.
know what germ is, right?
Yeah.
GERM, it's an acronym.
Yep, yep. It stands for the Global Education Reform Movement. I did not create that acronym. I think I cite who did in this article. I think I cited somebody.
I
And I
first
don't
read
know if
it.
they're yeah.
I first read it in Let the Children Play with William Doyle and Martin
Yes, yeah.
Dahlberg,
And
but
I
I
did
have other
too, but I
copies of it.
cited Wasmus and Nick Techie in 2017. And I think that's where I had seen it too as well. But it's the idea that like neoliberal policies are not just happening in the United States, right? They're happening all over the world. And so a global education reform movement is seeking to standardize education and public education in multiple countries around the world. And so, yeah, it's a great acronym, GERM, because then you can talk about germ as an infection and as the problem to
Right,
be, and
yes,
what's
and
the antidote to
spreading.
germ? Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's really well framed. And when we're talking about commodification, it's sort of dehumanizing children into a unit of the economy or a unit
Yeah.
of something we can make money off of. Is the super paraphrase
Yeah.
that I think about for commodification. So this quote to start is a little bit longish, but I think it's a good place to start. So you wrote, the commodification of childhood is an outcome of how the global education reform movement, or GERM, operates in early childhood education. One size fits all standards, high stakes standardized assessments that begin in kindergarten, and the push down of academics in the early years are a few examples of how GERM impacts the early years. However, the language used to push reforms sanitizes the discourse and muddies the reality. Side note, great language, thank you. Words such as college and career ready, high quality, and developmentally appropriate practices convey outcomes and experiences we should want for all children, but they fail to reveal that the means used to pursue these ends turn childhood into an object and early learning into a commodity. That was a lot to follow. It's longer than I usually start with, but it's there's a lot in there that I think could take us in different directions here. But I want to start by just letting you sort of respond to that or elaborate on that.
Yeah, and thanks. I read those words, and I got to thank Jameson and Greg because honestly, when you write, like it gets rewritten, and I'm like, did I write that, or did the editors,
Yeah.
did Greg rewrite that for me? I really don't know. So thank me, but I'm going to thank Jameson and
Okay,
Greg
yeah.
because they also helped me polish this really well. They were great to work with. So yeah, it was really interesting. So later in that chapter, I say I was in 2019. I was in China. I was doing my first visit there to for the first True Play conference in this rural area called Anji. It's about 3 hours outside of Shanghai. They had been doing really neat stuff around early childhood, and they had this conference, right? And so Miss Chang, the founder of the program there, is presenting, right? And so she puts up this chart about GERM, and she talks about the global crisis in early childhood education, right? So in my chart, I have what she had on her screen on the right, and I was able to link that to all the features of GERM that other people, right, like Posse Solberg and Wasmus have put into theirs. And so it was like this synergy that I could see so clearly that what she's calling a global crisis in education and early childhood education is also GERM, right? And so I think a lot of people think about reform in education impacting older kids, like college and career readiness is something that's being done to high school kids, right? Rigor and standards is for older kids, but people don't really think about, but what does that mean for young children? And we know that all of this stuff impacts young children, right? So there I wanted to talk, like really show up how these things, right? They sound great. Who doesn't want a kid who's college and career ready? Who doesn't
Right.
want high quality? Who
Yeah.
doesn't want developmentally appropriate practices? And so people like sign off like this is great, but then they don't know what that actually means. Then people are
Yeah.
doing things and you're like, why are you doing that? Because that's what they think makes you college and career ready. That's what they think is high quality in the early years. That's what they think is developmentally appropriate. And it's not, right? It's far
Yeah.
from it. And so we have to like make sure that the slogans that sound good, okay, but how are they being implemented? Because what we're
Right.
asking young kids and their teachers to do in the name of these three things, most people would be like, no, I don't support that, right? But they don't know because you use these words that most people think sound really great.
Right. And they really have. And I think probably this is from William Doyle and Posse Solberg, like school readiness. They've become marketing slogans
Yeah,
more than anything, and gatekeepers for funding.
yeah,
And I think the people who have the power to make policy and the power to fund programming just hear those slogans and then go to an assumption. They don't necessarily have time or curiosity to be, oh yeah, that sounds great, but what is high quality? What should developmentally appropriate be for these ages? And how does it really feed into these other goals I have?
yeah.
Nobody's getting that curious. We're just saying, give us money and we'll use whatever words we need to.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the game. That's the commodity of it, right? Because
Yeah,
everyone wants a piece of the money. You want to do the work, you want to get the funding, right? So if
yeah,
you say kindergarten readiness is the name of the game and it's how I get the dollars, then I'm going to get those
right,
dollars and I'm going to
right.
talk about kindergarten readiness all day instead of why isn't kindergarten ready for children? Why do children who are 4 and 5 years old have to be ready for this place and this place not be ready for who they are and what
Yeah,
they're, right? It just shifts the whole conversation. And that's what like the idea of like college and career readiness, right? As you know, I'm really thinking about this, the dichotomy between preparation, education as preparation, and education as right now, today, like the being present in the moment. And so college and career ready muddies that, right?
yeah,
Because if you're focused on that, if you're looking at a 5 year old and like, I got to get you college and career readiness, you don't care about who they are right now
right.
as a 5 year old and their childhood and whether they're happy and they're enjoying it because you're so focused on college and career. And like, why would we care about that now? Like, yes,
Yeah,
there's times when we might think about that. So I've been really pushing back on this idea that early childhood teachers, that their main concern should be preparation for what's coming next. Like, because it's like the tail wagging the dog, right? You lose sight of everything else because you're so worried about this future point, right? And so I
right.
think, yeah,
And it's for that kind of an economy to work, for people to make money off of that, you cannot look or talk about children as human beings, right? They have to be this future product.
Yeah.
And I think that economy depends on children being deficient. You talk about why don't we get kindergartens ready for children? Well, that would require us to shift and presume that children, wherever they are, have some competence that they bring, and that I'm the one who should have to shift and learn and change and um, be more flexible. It's harder to make money off of that
Yeah. Yeah. No,
than to
and that's
say
the thing.
we're in a
Yeah.
crisis and no one's ready, and so here's something you can buy to get them ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no, I mean, it's also like it brings out that false sense of urgency, right? That kids are born behind, that they're born
Yeah.
lacking, that we don't, if we don't do all these things now, they're not going to be okay. Instead of like kids come to us magically with everything, like the body, the brain, the development is just such a beautiful thing if
Yes.
you really understand it, like what it's primed to do, the way language develops, the way all these things come to be. And like we're getting in the way of all that because
Yes.
we're worried about some mythical future that we're not even quite sure how to get there. And yes, we're trying to commodify, we're trying to make money instead of thinking, it's not always about making money. God forbid, right? You start sounding
Yes.
like some crazy communist or something, right? Or just someone who's like, education's not about making money, right? And it's just it's about the person and the individual, and like, yeah, it's really
Yeah.
hard to fight against those narratives because people buy into it, and the pressure that parents, I think, fall under and teachers fall
Yes.
under is a big
Yeah.
byproduct of that I want to push back on, right? I want parents to be like, your child is fine. Your child deserves freedom right now in their life. They deserve to just be a kid and like really invest in that childhood. And that's building the foundation for everything that's coming later instead of worrying that your 5-year-old is already behind. Behind what? Behind
Exactly.
who?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think I've been saying this a lot the last few years that parents are, I used to get that cringe. Like when I was a child
Mm,
care center director, they'd call and they'd say, are you just like daycare or do they learn things? And and I still feel it in my body,
yeah,
just
yeah.
remembering it. And eventually somebody said something to me that shifted, and it shouldn't have taken this. I should have been able to have this perspective myself. But someone said they're just advocating for their child's educational success with the information they've been given. So if they're
Hmm.
also hearing all this stuff about crisis and college and career ready and rigor and all that stuff, of
Yeah, yeah,
course, that's what they're going to want. And I think that's key to this resistance that you write about, is getting the families in on it.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like I
yeah.
really dream about the day that a parent calls a child care center or preschool or whatever your setting is and says, so do they play a lot or do you like try to make it school too early?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, that would be my dream too. And I think about that. Like, if I grow my family and I get like, I'm gonna be like, wait, no, oh, they don't play? You don't let them play here all day? Okay, no,
Yeah.
that's not
All
for
right.
us, right?
Bye-bye.
Like, no, I want a supervised space where they're just free to play. And that's so not most people want, no, they think they have to
Right.
promote less play, that they have
Yes.
to make it educational, make it learning. And I love what that person said to you because their parents are doing the best for their
Yes.
child. And we can't dismiss their fears. I've read articles in the past where like, oh, these parents are so, they don't understand anything and they're just, no, 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 stop, like full stop. Parents
Yeah.
want the best for their children. That's where I would tell my students to start with that number one assumption. You have to
Yeah.
assume that all parents want the best for their child, right?
Mhm.
And so they are also bombarded with messages that make them fearful. And
Yeah.
actually, there are reasons to be fearful, right? Upward mobility is declining in lots of groups of people, right? Like,
Yeah.
we are not, the middle class is eroding. Kids are living at home with their parents like for a longer time. It's taking a
Mhm.
longer time to buy a house. And so that stuff is sticking in their mind as real future, right? As they're thinking of this kid they brought in this world and they want to see successful. And so that stuff is real, but we need to combat that with, okay, but that's not because they're getting too much play in kindergarten.
Right.
Actually, we argue it's the opposite, right? They're
Yeah.
not getting enough play in early childhood, and all of these things are happening, right? So we
Yeah.
have to take their fears and say, you're right, these are things are true. But what we're saying and what we understand from child development, from the research, is that more play is the answer, not
Yeah.
less play.
Yeah.
And so that's a hard thing to sell to parents, but I think it showed them that, like, yeah, I get what you're saying. You're totally right to be invested and concerned, but
Uh-huh.
the answer is not what you're being fed. That's a commodification answer, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. So that kind of leads into the next piece I've got flagged here, where you said, because you're talking about, it's not enough just to resist the ideas and resist the discourse. We have to have
Hmm.
something else to put in place. And so,
Yeah.
of course, the rest of your chapter is about how play is that thing to put in place, but you wrote, we must alter our expectations of early childhood teachers from transmitters of knowledge to guardians of childhood. And that is a humanizing sentence, right? They're not just empty blobs that we fill with the stuff they need to be college and career ready in 20 years or whatever, 18 years.
Yeah.
This is a precious time of life that we are like, we should feel honored to be part of.
Yeah. It's so
And
hard for people to recognize how special childhood is, right? And I guess because you forget yours a little bit, like, and
yeah,
I don't know, like, I think of like elderly, being elderly is a special time too, right? Like my mom and dad are in this elderly part of their life, right? I think like the grown up part, like being able to vote and do all these things is special. But like childhood, why is childhood not seen as like not something to just get through, but something like to revel in for that time, right? Like I want us to remember like childhood. We don't want to skip childhood. I feel like some people think we should just skip childhood. Like we
yes,
should just push kids. If there was a way that we could just push kids into adulthood, they would do it. And I'm like, oh,
exactly.
that makes me cringe, right?
Yeah.
And maybe
But
because
none of
they
us
didn't
say
have
that
good
out loud.
childhoods.
Yeah,
Yeah,
none of us
yeah,
say that out loud,
yeah,
really. Like I think about when
yeah.
I did interviews for staff at my center, and I'd say, why do you want the job? And they talked about
Hmm.
joy, and they talked about connection, and they talked about wanting to support children. But then you get in the classroom and we fall into these unexamined scripts of expectations that expect
Yes.
adulthood out of these children, birth to 5 or older
Hmm.
even. And that's exactly what's happening is um, they're seeing this, they're seeing children as we are seeing children as um, a widget, right? Whatever you call it in the assembly
Hmm.
line.
Hmm.
And if I
Hmm.
just apply, and here's a phrase I hate, but I keep reading, if I just apply the correct human technologies
Mm.
to this piece on my assembly line, then I will have the standardized product at the end that's going to benefit
Yeah,
us all.
yeah.
And what a weird way to think you can interact with humans of any kind, any age.
Yeah, it is strange, and I mean, but that's always been, I think, the history of people, right? Society, like this idea that like to just see everything in that sense of like an assembly line, like a
Yeah,
business, a product, and not, and then I don't know. And some people, it's like hard to wrap their brain around individuality, right? Like they
yeah,
science is all about conformity and objectivity and standardization. And so you take those things, right, and you apply it to people. And so it's just,
uh-huh,
and yeah, are there lots of similarities between people? Of course, right? But there are also some profound differences in each individual, right? And so, but we can't account for that because accounting for that is messy, right? That's the
yeah,
other thing. Standardization is simple. It takes away
yes,
chaos. It makes things easy to say
yeah,
all children at this, like I was just sharing that article about arbitrary, like the cutoff dates for kindergarten.
yes,
Like, what is it about people that just say, oh, you're not born by September 30th. Too bad. You can't go.
right,
What? What's that? Wait, what? Back up. What does that have to do with anything? But it's
uh-huh,
easy. It's
right,
efficient, right? Alfie Kohn, I remember the first time I read some of his work on standards, he talked about why standards, they're easy to measure.
yeah,
They're easy to write about and to check off. Like it makes things so all of these things make the system so much easier to maintain, and that's what people are looking for.
yeah,
And yeah, children are not that easy, right? Like some, yes, some fall along the standards and the widgets, but others are like, whoa, this is not
yeah,
me, this is not okay. And instead of like recreating a system for everyone, we say, oh, you're the problem. You don't fit
yes,
into the system we've already designed that we say
yeah,
works for everyone.
yeah. Again, I think this is something I've been thinking about for a little while now, but um, oh, I hope I can remember what I was about to say. Oh yeah, people in early childhood, we get, myself included, very offended when someone says, oh, anyone can work with kids, right? Anyone can do that work. And we get so upset. But I have started to really believe that when we're thinking about this from that technician, like I
Hmm.
just go in and I go through my scheduled things and I do the same things every September 22nd. Um,
Hmm.
every year I do the same things for that week, and I have the same rules, and I have a list of consequences for the rules, and I just sort of push out anyone who doesn't fit. Anyone can do that work, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
really, to me, that's really true. Anyone can do that. But this stuff that you're talking about, where we have to really deeply understand humanity and childhood and
yeah,
and what priorities should be, and if college and career ready is our goal, how do we get there, what foundational stuff
yeah,
should
yeah.
be there. That's really hard, and not everyone can do that.
It's hard, and most people don't want to, right? Like I think about how many times I taught foundations of education in 20 years. Like, oh my goodness, I taught that class so many times. And then at Sarah Lawrence, I was teaching it in the summer, every summer, and I never could do it the same way because
Mhm.
so much in my thinking had changed over the year
Exactly.
that I
Yes.
had to like read, and I would get so angry because I'm like creating this whole new thing. I
Yes.
got 4 short weeks, and I'm redoing
Yeah.
everything, but it worked every year because I'm bringing in my, my
Yes.
thoughts have changed over the year of what I understand my goal is to give you in this class. It's not the same thing every year. Yes, I'm talking historical things that have not changed, but how I presented to you in what context in relation to the contemporary, that's a big
Yeah.
difference, right? Pre-COVID, what we were saying pre-COVID to post-COVID cannot
Yes.
be the same, right? For some
Yeah.
of us, right? But
Yeah.
but you have to want that. And I think there are a lot of people who want to work with kids because they like kids. They think it's
Yeah.
fun. They think it's a
Yeah.
great environment, but
Yeah.
they don't want the intellectual challenges of actually doing that whole process of saying, okay, where are we today? Who am I with
Yeah.
today? What was in the past that I'm trying to bring it? What's in the future? I
Yeah.
remember reading an article, Heather, that said, we used to be able to predict the knowledge that kids would need in the future, like when I was younger, right? And all this. They can't, it's
Right.
impossible. The
Right.
growth of technology has made it impossible. We don't know what knowledge you're going to need in 10 years. We
Right.
just, because we don't know, we could have a whole new technological advancement that changes everything. So
Mhm.
you can't just say, "Oh, I know what you're going to need. You're going to need these. This
Yeah.
is the skills of the future." And so we can't be doing just the same thing over and over and over again with the same kids. And think how I'm like how much when I think how things have changed from when I was a kid to when I was teaching kindergarten to where I am today, and how drastically things have changed. Like, why would we be doing something that was done back then just because we did it, right? Without
Yeah.
thinking, okay, does it align with where we are today, where we're going? Like, what about it in the past do we want to bring into the future? I
Yeah.
find that part of teaching to be so great. And I hate to say it, in my recent years of teaching, I didn't find a lot of people who were into that part of it.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're not, you want to be a teacher, but you're not really into teaching and learning. Like the
Exactly.
fascination of that as a concept. And that scares me sometimes because
For
I guess
sure.
I've always been fascinated, which is why I went into the field and why I continue to be. But a lot of people aren't. They're just like, yeah, no, let's just give me give me the script, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
I just
yeah.
need to get through. I think I know that when I was a director and now as a college professor, um, I get teased a lot by the people asking me questions because my answer so often is, well, it depends
It depends.
on lots of
Heather,
things.
that's a big law school trick. That's what they teach you in the first year of law school.
Is it?
Because it depends. You got to take the facts of this case, compare it to the
Yes.
facts of that case.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're going to get the same outcome. It depends. Like literally what they teach you in law
Yeah.
school. So
All
you're right
right.
on track.
I'm almost there. I could be a lawyer.
You could. Because that is like the number one answer. It depends.
Yep, yep. So I do want to get more to place specific kinds of stuff, but I also wanted to read this piece because it rings so true to me and so many people I know, but when talking about high stakes standardized tests, that it
Mhm.
creates a system of winners and losers, and it's
Yeah.
the winners who tend to maintain their faith in standardized teaching, learning, and assessments best for all children. And I think I read once a long time ago, just like a Facebook, probably quote meme thing that was like the people who support this current system and don't see the need to change are the ones who did well in that
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
system. And I'd sort of forgotten that till I read this, and some people didn't like that, but I think
Yeah.
that's something we have to at least be open to. Like,
Yeah.
is this
Yeah.
just because I did well, so I expect everyone should be able to do well?
Yeah.
um
I think that's part of it. I remember I was being interviewed on a NPR show, the Kojo Namdi show. He's one of the guys in DC, but it wasn't him. I was sad. It was like a guest filling in for him.
you're so
And
fan.
we're talking about standardized testing because I used to be a part of a resistance group called United Opt Out.
Uh-huh.
And she goes, the first thing she says is like, I did great on standardized testing. Why would we want to get rid of them? And I was like,
Mhm.
thank you for saying that because that's the perfect idea. But it's
Uh-huh.
more than these benefited me and I want to keep them, but it's also the belief that you want something that separates you from other people.
Yeah.
And people need to just acknowledge that we are very hierarchical, and we want to be able to separate people, right? We want to be able to say, I have this skill, I have this strength, I have this quality that you don't have, right? That
Uh-huh.
is the basis of a lot of education and a lot of society. It's not about equalizing, right? But it's
Uh-huh.
about ranking and sorting who knows more, who can do more. And so she made that point equally, right? Of course, you're vested in a system that made you a winner and you want to keep that system because you believe that, people like you should have different advantages than people who are not like you, right?
Yeah.
Or are not investing in their education. So there's this belief that like everyone can do it, but not everybody tries hard enough, right? The
Mhm.
meritocracy then creeps in, right? If I can work hard to be good at standardized tests, why can't you?
Yes.
Instead of saying no one should have to work hard at standardized tests because they only benefit testing companies,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I mean,
And so, yeah,
yeah. And I see that in settings with really young children. Like I think about circle time stuff
yeah,
when people are asking me for advice about behavior during circle time. There's so often it's phrased as, well, that's not really fair to the kids who want to learn if I,
yeah,
if I
yeah,
just don't demand everyone to comply, or if I let some leave the circle or whatever. And that's already there, that there's something inherently better about people the traditional system seems to work for.
yeah,
And that's why it's so hard to look at where we need to resist the traditional
yeah.
system.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. It used to come up for me all the time when I was grading, and these are teaching college students, teaching pre-service teachers. And I would tell in my class, I think, you guys are going to make it, you guys make it very difficult for me to treat you as an individual. Because one of you are going to come in and set this bar up to here. And
Yeah.
I'm going to be concerned, how do I assess you in relation to everyone else who's not giving this up here? Do I raise the bar and say, y'all need to meet where this student is because this is like the top? Or do I say, oh, that's great, that's what you do,
Uh-huh.
but this is what they do, and
Uh-huh.
that's okay, right? Because when they find out that I gave the same grade to someone who turned in a 20-page paper and someone who did a 10, they're going to be pissed. That's not
Yeah.
fair. I wrote
Yeah.
20 pages. Okay, that wasn't the requirement though.
Yeah.
The requirement
Yes.
was 8 to 10. They did 10, right? Or something, right? And so it's like this back and forth of what's fair and what's not fair. And how do I treat you as an individual and not compare you to what your other peers are doing? Because it shouldn't really matter, right? And so the one thing I did love at Sarah Lawrence was that we had this conference system where for 2 additional credits you worked individually with me, and that was really great because I didn't have to compare what you were doing individually in your conference to everyone else. It was your project with me, and I could assess you on that, right? What you said you
Yeah.
were going to do, what you worked on, and what you actually did. And I
Yeah.
wish more of schooling was like that. But you know how time consuming that is? I
Yeah.
met with them every other week. So I'm meeting every week with half my class of students on
Uh-huh.
their conference projects. I got to monitor the progress. I got to read the
Uh-huh.
extra papers. I'm talking 12, 15 students giving me an
Uh,
extra 25-page paper at the end of the thing. I quickly said, doesn't have to be a paper. You can do something art-based. You can, like, I'm
uh-huh.
trying to get out of this because it's
Yes.
like, but it showed me that, right, it needed to be individual. So I wasn't using one student as the metric
Uh,
for all, right?
yeah.
And so that thing about the circle time, I remember teaching kindergarten in Washington, D.C. And we had a kid who he didn't stay in our class long and he had some challenges, right? And he would just kind of like leave the circle. And I didn't want to stop. Heather, I didn't want to stop the circle,
Yeah.
but I see him kind of reeling away, but he was being really quiet. And so he like left and he went over to, and then here comes some kid, Miss Jones, da, 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 that's the circle. And the other girl said, leave him alone. He ain't bothering nobody. Back to Miss Jones. And I was like, thank you.
Thank you.
Because what she said is right. He is not bothering nobody.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to disrupt the circle and stop everything I'm doing to go chastise this boy who needs to leave the circle right now. I can see it leaving the circle. He was disrupting, but he
Uh-huh.
wasn't. And so, but one kid felt it wasn't fair, and the other girl was quick to be like, don't. You're messing up the game, right? You're messing up the thing. So it's funny how even little kids see that
Right.
nuance, right? They
Yep.
see it like in different ways, but some children want everything to be the same. If he can leave the circle, why can't I leave the circle? Would you have said the
Yeah.
same thing to me if I left the circle, right? It's
Yes.
such a hard thing, but we got to just be in it with the kids. And there were some times where they flat out said, he can do that. Can I do that? I said, yes. One kid came in ate late. I let him eat in the dollhouse corner. Why is he eating? I'm like, because he's hungry. Oh, can I come in late? And then literally parents are like coming in like the kids swore they could eat here. I'm like, they know the rules. If they come in late, they can sit and eat their
Uh-huh.
breakfast. And they wanted reciprocity. They wanted to know that. And so that boy said one time, I said, yes, if you really need to leave the circle and you can do so quietly without disrupting the circle, I'm going to allow you to
Yeah.
do that the same way I allowed him. So it's a negotiation, right? And it's hard. It's easier to just say, get back here. You're disrupting circle. Leave, right? And then I've disrupted the entire circle.
Exactly.
And then why are we having circle time? Why are we forcing all the kids to come to the circle and sit here if they don't want to be here?
Yeah,
Because
that's
that
a
is the
whole other.
expectation. That's a whole other thing, right? And I've seen it done where there is no circle. Kids come, they hand me a book, I read. While I'm reading, they leave. They don't have to stay and finish the story. I just keep reading. Another kid hands me a book. First kid comes back, and I'm like, and I just sit there and read 15 books to whoever is listening. And I don't ask questions, and I don't, oh, can you see the picture? No. I'm just reading because I'm being asked to read. And it's this in and go, and kids are coming and going. And I was like, that was actually a better use of my time than everybody sit here, crisscross applesauce, and read this, listen to the story you don't want to hear, right? And so, but we don't see that. That's a private preschool. I don't get to see that flexibility in public schools and kindergartens, right? Because we are told that circle time means everybody needs to do this together. It's only fair, but what is fair? What is fair in that sense? So.
Yeah. And as adults, we resist standardization for ourselves all the time, right? We always have a reason why we did something some way when it wasn't supposed to be done that way. And we always want to be able to at least offer a perspective if someone suggests we did something we weren't supposed to do. We've always got a rationale, but for some reason we don't see that piece of humanity when we're looking at groups of children with these pressures on us. I mean, I want to acknowledge that the pressure is real, right? To make these decisions. And I'll say again, I haven't gotten anyone in trouble yet, or at least I haven't heard, but this is a great time to resist because there's a childcare staffing shortage.
That's what I tell everybody all the time. I'm like, exactly. And if they do, go get another job somewhere else. Like you, during that interview, you should be interviewing them. Like, I'm going to do this. Are you going to support me? Yes or no? Because I don't want to waste my time. And then kids look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, look, I straight up told them what I was going to do when I interviewed. This was, God, 2003. This was 20-something years ago. And they kept pushing me back on the interview. I wanted to use project approach. Well, what if he said, I've said no. I'm your principal. I said no. What are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to tell the kids that you said no. And if they agree that we're going to do it anyway, we're going to post lookouts in the front of the classroom. And when we see you coming, we're going to change the plan. And he looked at me like, and I was dead serious at this point. Like, I'm going to do what the kids want to do, sir. And I got the job in 2003. Right. And the market was different. I tell like, you got to be honest. You got to be clearly who you are as a teacher, what you want to do. Are you going to support me with parents? Right. Like I have a friend who's a kindergarten teacher in Brooklyn, private school. She does a lot on gender equity, on trans, being trans and all this stuff. And she tells parents, right. She tells the director of the program event, and a parent comes in and she reads a book about, a kid with, who's transgender and the parents flip out. And they said, well, this is not the place for you then. And it's a private program. And no one wants to risk losing that money, but we got a wait list. This is not the place for you. Like, this is who our teacher is. We fully support her. I mean, I wish there could be more. I know it's harder to do in a public school, but you can take a stand and say, look, we got to educate all children, not just your child, right? We have a commitment to all children. That's what I would tell my family. It's like, oh, when are you going to kick this kid out? His behaviors are off the chart. I said, I'm not going to kick him out because I wouldn't kick out your child either if he just had some troubling behaviors. Here's the place to work on those behaviors. So I got to think about all kids. I can't put him out. He hasn't done anything drastic enough to be kicked out of the program. But they're so used to just getting kids kicked out because they have a little behaviors that other parents don't like. And I'm like, you're not even here in the class all day with the kids, like, and you want them kicked out of just from hearsay behaviors, like, and so the pressure is real. Like you said, the pressure is real. Like, and teachers are forced, like, but I think that you need to assert yourself. Like these young teachers coming in, they need to have a clear ability to articulate who they are, what they're doing, and why. And then ask for that support. And if they're not going to get it, then go somewhere else where you're going to get it, because you waste too much time working in this spaces where people aren't going to support.
And you're just unhappy and physically, it's affecting you physically. I think if we were entirely a different kind of culture, this could be our Reggio Emilia moment.
Yes.
But because we are not, I think we will just persist with this. So I want to go, that's a good segue, because what you're talking about, right, is you have to know your pedagogy. You have to know your guiding ideas about how you teach and how children learn and how things happen. And so your assertion is the antidote to GERM and all that standardization and commodification is to play.
I mean, for me, play is like I always go back to the child development, what we know about play, right? And there's
Hmm.
all these different theories, but everyone talked about play. And my
Hmm.
favorite, of course, is Vygotsky and play
Yeah.
because he really saw children as more capable than we realize they are, more capable than they may be, because
Yeah.
that's what play is. It's
Uh-huh.
like it's like putting
They're a
yourself in
head
a
taller.
position to you're head taller. You're doing things you're not always think you could do or didn't know you could do, right? And like even if you don't do it the first day because you're scared and you go back, like that's still pushing yourself. Like I've seen children do that. Like I was observing in a center and I'm mid conversation and she goes, "Oh, I gotta go." She's climbing to the top of the thing and she hadn't done that before and I gotta go see that, right? She'd been watching this
Uh-huh.
little girl for a week try to get up there and she wouldn't. And then she just saw at the corner of her eye she was doing it and she just wanted to go capture that moment, right? Because she was playing and she finally was that head taller. And so when we think about development, which I think that's another issue, right? We're so focused
Yes.
on education and teaching and learning, and the basis of early childhood, the basis of childhood is development. And they
Yes.
are intertwined, but they're not exactly the same. Like the focus on just teaching and learning gets us away from development, right?
Right.
Play is the leading activity of development. It is the mechanism at which the most development occurs
Hmm.
in childhood, right? And that's what a lot of the folks are saying. And beyond childhood, I love the neo Vygotskyans and other
Yeah.
what is that? And I always forget the word, but the cultural historical activity theory, like chat or something, like these folks as well who take
I don't know that
Vygotsky's
one.
theory,
Okay.
they look at it and they say play is like the leading activity of development through adulthood, right? It's
Mhm.
not just childhood, which is what Vygotsky said.
Yeah.
So when I think about, okay, so what's happening? We got all these pressures, we got all this stuff. What are we missing? We're missing that children build a foundation for learning through play, right? Like they come to us so curious. They have so many questions. They want to know so many things. Like that is like the basis for all future learning. And instead of shutting that down and saying, sit here, don't ask your questions, listen to me, repeat what I say, how about I let you play so that you can chase that innate curiosity, right?
Yeah.
That chasing of it is so important for childhood. I mean, I feel like my childhood, that's all I did was like, I
Yes.
did what I wanted to. I chased the things that were interested in me. Like I went down rabbit holes. I
Yes.
did all sorts of things. And like, and that's who I am today. Like I'm very much still that I can be reading anything. And next thing I know, I got a tab open. I'm down a rabbit hole researching,
Uh-huh.
because that's how I process things because I was allowed to as a child. I was allowed to follow my thoughts and my questions and pursue them and do experiments and ask questions, right? And so that's it, right? If kids just are doing all of those things at a young age, and they want to do it, if we give them the time and space to do it, right? They're going to build that foundation that's so critical for then learning things that have to be taught. There
Yeah.
are things kids have to be taught. I don't think you can learn multiplication through play. This is the one
Right,
thing
right,
I want to
right.
study in my dream study
But
life.
a lot
Like,
of the concepts that will
yeah,
help multiplication make sense, you do
yes, you
develop.
do learn through play. You
Yeah.
develop through organizing, sorting, all of the
Yep.
making observations of groups getting bigger and smaller.
Yep.
You're building things up, right? And so, yes, having all that, then you're like, okay, I can learn these multiplication facts. I was a whiz at multiplication facts, right? Because I had so much other things, and now
Yeah.
kids aren't. They're not making those connections. They're not connecting their body, their mind, to what they're actually doing and learning, and they're struggling. They're struggling greatly and I'm just like, I don't understand why. So yeah, I come back to play just being like the basis of child development, the basis of the foundation for learning. And if we just let kids do that, then we're building the skills that they're going to need down the road, right?
Yeah.
And I think if we're worried about down the road, and I get that some people are, right? But I believe that more play gets us there than less play. And so yeah, to me, that's an antidote to germ because then I also talk about play as freedom and liberation. And so that to
Mhm.
me is the antidote to germ as well, too.
Yeah. So will you talk about that? Like what do you mean as when you say play as liberation, and are we
Yeah,
liberating
yeah.
from the germ garbage? Is
From the
that what
germ stuff, yeah. So again, back to China. This all came to me
Uh-huh.
while I'm sitting in China, and I'm listening to, again to these all these different people presented. Um, a lot of the folks from Anji Education were there. We had earphones translating everything to us, and they had their slides up. But there were different things that they were first witnessing it. So we
Mhm.
visited maybe, I don't know, half a dozen preschools or so, whether it was a Friday and they were already there or a Saturday where the parents were told, hey, can you bring the kids? We've got visitors coming. We got to see the kids in action, right? And so this sense of freedom was just like we're walking around. So again, at the conference, there were 300 people at the conference. 200 were mainland Chinese folks, and not from the Anji, but from the rest of the country, because China was like, everyone needs to do this. And then there were 100 of us from outside of China, right? And so we're at these ridiculously large preschools. That's another thing, right? The largest
Yeah.
one, they said 500 kids. I'm like, what?
Oh my God.
They were like, I think the
I,
smallest one we visited had 86 children. And they
oh
were like,
my
this is
gosh.
tiny. And I'm like, 86 kids is tiny? Oh my goodness, right? So we're spread out, and it's just this, like, I just am like, wait, the kids are just, they're just doing whatever they want. Like, they were free.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
remember asking, like, okay, you come out in a group together, how do they leave and go to another space? Are they just free to go? They said they get to come tell the teacher, like, hey, we're gonna go over there, right? That's
Okay.
it. And so they're out, they're not in there. Some stay in the same space they start, because each group of kids, because 500 kids, have a particular area outdoor, but then there's a whole lot more space. And I'm watching kids just build, and I guess, yes, there are adults there, educators there. They are documenting, right? A lot of photographic evidence, recording, and they are there for safety. I watched the boy get on a thing, fall
Sure.
down, hurt his arm, get up, teacher came up, and then he went right back to work, right? So they're that kind of, but there wasn't a lot of direct instruction, right? There was none of that. And if kids wanted it, if they wanted to sit at a
Yeah.
table and do art and they wanted a teacher to help them, then of course that's what they were going to get. So I noticed just how free they were, right?
Yeah.
And so through that freedom, they built the most elaborate constructions. They were engaged, like the level of engagement that you just don't even think is possible. We're talking 1 to 2 hours outdoors, and then the cleanup time, the transition inside, and that's a long time. Like, it's like
Yeah.
30 minutes, and it
Yeah.
works, right? Because the kids are like playing games and they're like cleaning up. And then they go in and they reflect, right? They get ready for play stories and play sharing. So they sit at a table and they kind of draw a picture about what they were doing. And then they go into this space where they're like sitting in front of the screen, and the teacher has their place video, the play sharing that they wrote, their reflections, the video, and the pictures that the teachers taught. And then
Uh-huh.
again, I will always regret that I don't know Mandarin because I couldn't understand this conversation. But I watched this 45-minute scaffolding of the play of what was happening. Now, what I could tell is that the kids built this elaborate ramp, and it was the two things weren't connecting, right? It was a simple gap, and so the tire would hit the gap and it would not go all the way down the ramp, right? So they were trying to fix this, and of course the teacher just said, well, you see this gap right here, like that gap right there. No, she didn't say that. So
Uh-huh.
every child was coming up and talking about it and explaining it, what they were doing, and it just seemed like even the children who weren't all doing it came up and gave
Mhm.
ideas about what they
Yeah.
saw. And so it was just so skillful to have it. And then it was just like, okay, try again tomorrow, right? There was no,
Mhm.
it was just a reflection. This is what you did. This is what we talked about. This is what you tried. It was just so skillful. And again, I don't know every word, but you can see. And what did I notice about the kids sitting there? They were engaged in the conversation. You know what circle time looks like. It looks 2 minutes in.
Mhm.
Stop poking me. Move over. Get off
Yes.
me. No. First of all, they were hot and sweaty because they've been playing all day. So they're
Yeah.
sitting there having little sweat rags and their
Yep.
little
I can
water.
smell that
And
room.
yeah, and they were so just. I mean, you play for 2 hours. All of that nervous energy's out. You can just sit
Mhm.
there and listen. They weren't sleeping. I kept looking. Is anyone
Yeah.
falling asleep like I see a lot? Nope. But they weren't restless. They
Yeah.
didn't have unexpanded energy that was consuming the time. So it went really well. And that was it. And if that's the flow, right? And so that freedom there. And so then I saw the teachers being free to really see the children. And this came through in the presentation. She was like, one of the teachers said, we actually began to see the children. We became cognizant of who they were and not who we were told children were at this time, right? We're told
Oh,
that
wow.
children at this age can't do this, they can't do that. No, 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 we don't see the can't do. We see what they actually do. And what
Mhm.
they do is marvelous. I asked in the large group one time in the conference, I said, how do you deal with transition to first grade? Because this is a big issue. I know this was a thing in Reggio and other places. Like,
Uh-huh.
how do you transition? And they said, it's an issue, right? And one of the year they decided to go bring the first grade teachers to come visit the
Uh-huh.
kids in Andy before. And the teachers were like, whoa, we didn't know they could do this. We got to
Wow.
rethink everything, right? Because once you see what they're doing before they come to you, you're
Yeah.
not going to have them doing something dumb and limiting because you think that's who they are. Then it changed everything, right? So that's the process, right? You got to bring everyone in to see it. We asked about the parents, and the parents went there as kids. So of course they loved it for themselves, and they want their kids in this space too. And so there's a natural progression there that the parents know that this is beneficial because it's what they had.
Yeah.
So that was the freedom. And then it just was like more in the liberation, like, the children, when adults see you in limitations, right? And when adults don't see you in limitations, that's liberating. Right. So
Mhm.
I tell the story of the one picture. I don't know if that picture is on here in this article. No, I put it, it's in some of the other ones, but there's a boy coming down a hill and he used the ladder to make slides, right? And so I'm watching him, and my fear, Heather, was that he was going to get too much speed and crash.
Yeah.
There's like a wall behind me and no
Yeah.
one's over there. And I'm like, so I kind of stand in front of the slide and he looks at me and he's like, move, because, hand gestures and laughter,
Uh-huh.
that's our communication. And so I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, fine. So I back up and I'm like thinking first aid, like be prepared to splint his arm or something. Man, he comes flying down a hill and he turns and he just goes along the side of the wall, no problem. And that was liberation for him, because other teachers would have said, you can't do that, that's too dangerous.
Yes. Yeah.
So he was liberated from my deficit thinking that he couldn't do this, that he needed help. I'm cheering him on. He's looking at me like, lady, I don't care. And he went back up to the top of the hill. Like, like he needed my encouragement. He didn't need my encouragement, my guidance, my protection, my nothing. Right.
Uh-huh.
He needed the space and time to do what he was doing. So that was so liberating for him and for me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just kept wrestling with these concepts. And I was just like, play is liberation, play is freedom. And it's what we all need, right? Teachers need freedom and liberation to do
Yes.
what they've been trained to do, what they desire. Children need freedom and liberation to be and to develop well. And I think play is how we get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I love learning and seeing and hearing stories about Anji play. And it's so interesting to me, and this isn't necessarily a hot take, but that this is what you're describing is happening in China, when a
Hmm.
lot of the rationale for our academic push down is so we can
Yep,
compete with China.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting, it wasn't all of China, right? That's what the whole that brought, and a lot of the other Chinese educators are like, oh, we don't do this. Oh, we can't, right?
Yeah.
Because they have a very, very strict, a lot
Right.
of these companies, these countries that do well on standardized assessments, right? They're very heavy on, I mean, we think our kids get it bad. Like these kids are in
Yeah.
school, they're learning, they leave school and they got tutors and they're doing all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like, and so even that, they're trying to change that policy because a lot
Right.
of those places are realizing they have a lot of male adults who lack creativity,
Mhm.
lack connection and compassion. I was just reading that somewhere else, right? That was the danger in some of these things that, and yeah, that was in the article. Instead of us go like emulating them, we should be like learning from their mistakes. That a generation of kids raised on no play and heavy academics then gives you an outcome where you have these
Mhm.
problems, right? And we don't tie our outcomes to these things, like the male loneliness. I mean, you boys didn't get enough play. You didn't get enough free play. You didn't get enough rough and tumble. You didn't get enough any of this stuff, right?
Yes.
Or build
Yeah.
compassion. You didn't play with baby dolls. You didn't play house and do all these things to build your compassionate side of you. And now you're feeling lonely in this world, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
we don't make the connections. That lack of play is a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because we just jump to the easiest connection, right? Whatever the easiest assumption is, without saying what else could it be. Well, no, it
Yeah.
must
What else?
just be because of
Yeah.
feminism that men are lonely.
Exactly, exactly. Women aren't marrying these guys, and now they're so lonely. And I'm like,
Oh, poor
okay.
babies, poor babies.
Yeah, I love when I used to see the little boys like play baby dolls and give them a bath and dress them up, and I'm like, oh, I'm so hopeful you're not going to be part of
Mhm.
the male loneliness epidemic because you're getting all that compassion you need right now and stuff. And
Yeah, yeah. So I think I put my book away, but the last line is something about how a pedagogy of play will save the world.
I have my moments of being a Pollyannish person where I do believe in saving the world. And I
Just
went on that kick when I was doing
sometimes.
this. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, because I do believe like everything is so bad and like it's not commodified, right? We were talking about this. Can't make any money off of play, right?
Yeah.
But why is saving the world not a good enough reason to invest
Right.
in this? I'm
Seems like a
sorry, it
pretty good
doesn't make
return on
money, but
investment.
yeah, but but saving the planet isn't good. Saving society, right? Saving culture,
Yeah.
that's not good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been saying that because I do think like seeing like when I was there in China, I remember you do get tear. A friend told me you're gonna cry, like, and you do.
Yeah.
I was the last day I was just like, it's not fair that the kids I go home to don't get this, right? And
Mhm.
it wasn't like we're talking 3 hours remote area, and like there's still, I bet you, if we measured happiness and longevity and all those things,
Mhm.
like we would see those people are some of the most happy people in the world in
Yeah.
terms of just like enjoying their life, right? Not in terms of success and making money,
Mhm.
but just enjoying the life
Yeah.
that they have and live, and staying in their community and building that for their children. And we know that's not the case for so many of us, that we're
Mhm.
not happy. We don't have the happiness. So I think about saving the world in sense of just like helping people cope, resilience, right? Like that you need. Like
Yes.
we can't, like I said, we can't I wish we could just erase child poverty, make sure every family has a home and child house, health care and food and all of that. And we can't do that, unfortunately. But we can help build resilience, right? And we
Yeah.
know play is one of the things that kids need, or if they are suffering through poverty and all of these other things, that they can, it's a protective factor, right? If you
Right,
think
right.
about trauma and the protective factor, we know that play is the way that children deal with their fears. They can kind of go through that. Play therapy is a huge thing because we know that that ability to get into that fantasy world and work through those issues is healing for those kids.
Uh-huh,
So,
uh-huh.
so yeah, I'm gonna stick to that. Save the world a little
All
bit, right?
right,
I
perfect.
mean, we have to. In my foundation of ed class, I look at all these isms that are happening, and one of them, I put an arrow on how do we burst these bubbles, and I'm like, play pedagogy, right? We use this to like burst some of these imperialism and all of these
Yeah,
things, right? And my students think I'm nuts, and I'm
yeah,
like, but let's just try it and see.
yeah, yep. I got a little bit of that too going in with my students, but
Yeah.
at least they affectionately think I'm nuts at this point.
Yes,
They're not
yes,
rioting
yeah.
yet.
But we need that
Um,
hope. We can't just
yes,
be all doom and
absolutely.
gloom. We can't just be all, because then it's like no one wants to hear that. My youth students
Right.
used to tell me, "You're so depressing. Everything you talk about is just so terrible." And I'm like, "I know. Okay, let me bring out some of the." And then and then they see me get all excited about play, and they're like, "Oh, there is hope." I'm like, "There's a lot of hope, guys. I gotta set the stage to why how we got here,
Right.
and then like yes, no, I do believe that there is a way we get out of all of
Yeah.
this, and yeah, I hope more people
Yeah.
will believe it too."
Yeah, me too. Well, thanks. This was very, I just want to go study and read and write.
Well, I have a
In
new
my
article
time.
out on play. I tell
Yeah,
some of these same stories, but about the liberation. That article just came out, and so I'll make
yeah,
sure you get a copy of it. It's from the Critical Social Educators Journal,
yeah.
and so they
Is
did a
it,
double issue on play.
I can put a link in the show notes too if I,
Yes, yes, I will
yeah,
send a link and you can,
yeah,
yeah, you can download the whole special issue. There's two of them. I'm in the second one, but yeah, I'll
yeah,
send the whole thing. But yeah, my article was about can we all be free? Stories about the possibilities of freedom through play. And so I tell some of these stories that I've told and that are in that chapter, but also some that I gained in the States. Like I did observations at a public school in kindergarten, a preschool, I'm sorry, a public school in Pittsburgh that does play lab, and then the private school. And so I bring in more because I don't want people to think, oh, it's just in China. So
right.
many people are
Yeah,
doing this here. It's
yeah,
just, they're a smaller community of play people doing it here. So it's like, not just China, we can do it here too. Because a
yeah.
lot of people are like, we can't do that. We can't do that. I'm like,
We can.
we
So
can.
many of us are if
We
we just
are,
need
and I
to
want to tell more of
make
those
it visible.
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking for more that I call early childhood liberators, people who
Yeah.
are liberating childhood. They're like, and I mean, I know these people. You know them too. We saw them a couple weekends ago.
Uh-huh. Yep.
They're great people and they're working hard, and I want to like
Absolutely.
uplift their voices and their work because I think if more people saw it, like, yeah, you can run a family childcare in the mountains of New York and just be that lady with them feral kids running around, and those kids love her and they come back and
Yes.
they love it, and they have
Yeah.
their childhood is being protected, and that's so special.
So
And
hard.
I just wish
Yeah.
more people could do that, could see it, as something
Yeah.
that they could do.
Yeah. That's you, Melinda. I know you're listening.
Yes. Yes, Melinda. I love talking about Melinda. I know it makes her face turn red.
I
And I'm
know.
like, I'm talking about some of my great stories come from
Come
Melinda.
from Melinda. Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, thank you so much for the work and for the time. And I look forward to seeing the new stuff. I saw you share it, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, yeah. I got
Um,
to read the other ones of my co-authors in the
yeah.
special issue. So I'm
Yeah.
excited.
I'm looking forward to it. All right. Well, I better wrap it up. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Denisha. Thanks everybody for listening to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd.